Today, I am so excited because I'm going to be talking with Renée Johnson. Renée Johnson is the founder and chief learning officer at Third Coast Learning. Why this is important is because Renée has a very interesting way of looking into this great resignation we all hear about in the news. And we were talking last week about this issue, the Great Resignation, and her and I were bantering around different ideas. And I'm like, oh, this is so good. We have to share this. So we decided to go live today on YouTube. If you have any comments as we're talking, please feel free to post them. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. We are here. We want this to be a collaborative setting where we're talking about this topic because we both, and I'm sure anyone who's listening, feel it's so important that our employees, individuals we know, family members, are all finding that thing in their life that gives them meaning and purpose. Because when they find that, they're happier and the world is a better place for it. So let's jump in with my first question I had for Renée. And welcome. Welcome for coming. I really appreciate your time today.
Hi, thanks, Donna. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. My first question, which everyone already knows, is COVID hit. And when COVID hit, companies had to revamp how they were doing business. They couldn't go into office. Maybe they had to distribute things differently. But how did that really affect employees?
Oh, this is a great question. I feel like if we had all the answers for this, we could just go ahead and retire today. Right?
All right, see you later.
Right? Here you go, guys. Here's the answers. We got it. We know how to solve this problem. I think that really, anytime you're in an emergency kind of situation, which really is what the pandemic caused, caused all of these organizations to really almost get into panic mode. Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And so one of the other roles that I have is working at a community college where I do a lot of professional development training. So I have this background in workforce development, and we kind of have our finger on the pulse of what's happening in our community because we have all of these connections with all of these organizations, right?
Yes.
So, and people are looking to us for solutions as well. And I think something that happened during the pandemic is that it really just amplified existing problems that were sort of already there. So we were already coming into some of these struggles with just infrastructure and organizations where, a few years ago, we had this surpassing of the millennial population as the largest workforce. So there's some trainings that we've done on that I've done on that, where you just talk about differences of generations in the workplace. And now more than ever, we have more generations in the workplace than we've ever had before. Yeah. So I see all of these articles on this Great Resignation that come through my inbox all the time. Yeah. And I feel like there's almost like two cases for this situation of why this is occurring. On the one hand, we have people that are saying, oh, everybody wants to work remote, or this hybrid workplace, and the structure of workforces is changing. And that's all true. That's very true. And then on the other hand, we have these employers that are saying, yes, but it doesn't work. And so again, I think that it's just amplified some of these existing problems that we had out there to begin with. And I feel like millennials are getting a lot of the blame for some of these things. And I'm not sure that that's well-placed blame by any means. I agree.
Yes.
It's tough. It's tough to put a finger on these things. But I think that what we have really is just this culmination of everything got pushed to the surface really, really fast. And of course, I'm in the industry of training. So my answer usually to these kind of problems are, we can probably fix it with some training.
Yeah. Well, but you're right. And I listened to a webinar last week, and they said, instead of calling it the Great Resignation, they called it the Great Reimagination.
Mm.
And exactly what you just said, and I agree with you. I don't think it is fair to blame this on any age group, because we're all going through this together,
Mhm.
and we're all having different issues based on one thing or another. I have some people who are millennials, but they don't like being on screen. They're
Right.
too shy. They don't like that. But I also have an older community sometimes, and they're like, "Oh, we don't know the technology." But then again, I have some people who are much older than me who are tech wizards.
Right.
They school me on this stuff. So I agree. It cannot be one specific age bracket, gender, anything, because it affected all of us.
Yeah. I think there's a couple other concepts that I've seen revolving around specifically the Great Resignation. And Liz Wiseman is an author. She's written a couple books where I feel like so relevant to the topic today. I think her newest book is called Impact Players. And
Ooh,
one of the things that she talks about is that it's not that people are suffering from burnout. It's that there's this phantom workload that people have. It's the working with people. And we're both kind of also in the world of marketing, which means
yes.
customer service. And it's those frontline employees that the more you work with people,
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes the quicker you could get to that burnout, right?
Mhm.
The problems usually stems around just working with people and how to build those kind of relationships, whether it's you're in sales and you're building relationships with your customers.
Yeah.
In a lot of the customer service training I do, I feel like sometimes we forget about the most important customer, which is your internal customer, which are your
Your employee.
coworkers, your
Yeah.
colleagues,
Yeah.
right? So she talks about this phantom workload, and definitely read her books. There are some phenomenal topics that she brings that I think just puts this in a little bit of a different light as far as what the data, and she's done a lot of research on this, right? So it's what the data is showing on what people are saying is what is it that's bringing people to this scenario of feeling like they're burnt out.
Right. What's her
There's a
name
lot of
again?
information.
What?
Liz, um, I want to say Wiseman, but no, that's not right. It'll come to me.
Okay. When it does, because
Yeah.
I find that very interesting. We always talk about, when you're saying about marketing, people say, "Oh, we got to get new prospects." And I'll be the first one to say, "Well, what about your customers? Make sure you're showing them the love." But what you just mentioned isn't that important. Make sure that all your employees feel that you truly care.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about burnout, I've gone into companies where the employees didn't even really know what their role, what they were supposed to be doing for their role,
Yep.
and what the main objectives were for the company.
Yeah. And then you have a pandemic getting thrown in, and
Yeah.
everyone all of a sudden has to manage more technology than they ever did before.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, did we train anyone how to use that technology?
Of course not. We all sat home in, what was that, March of what, 2000, and just be like, "Okay, now what do we do? Zoom? What's Zoom?"
Right. Right. Yeah. I
When I
mean,
was little, Zoom was a TV show for children.
right. So what little kids say cars do, they go zoom.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Craziness.
And it is. So we all did have to quickly evolve and pivot for this. But I agree, people don't know within companies what their job responsibilities are. And a lot of
Yeah.
times employees don't know what the company's mission is or what the
Oh,
company's
yes.
main goal is.
Yeah.
So where are they heading? Where's their purpose per se? If they
Yeah.
don't know that, they just come in every day, they do their everyday work, they get it
Right.
done, they get bored, like you said.
Yeah, then you have this whole other, this is where I think a lot of erroneous blame is being put on millennials, where there are these conversations where you hear they were all told, this whole generation of people were told, do what you love and you'll never work a day. So they go in having, some emerging employees go in with this expectation that things are going to be wonderful. And
Yes.
that's where in my industry, what we're trying to find balance with we don't want to encourage people to spend 4 years going to school learning how to do something that they love when there are no jobs in that industry.
Yeah.
So I think you have a little bit of this, you know, people think they're going to go into this organization and be enlightened. And so there's this disenchantment that happens. And I think people are looking at that as burnout. But really, I think sometimes it's just that they're not being pushed in the right direction, right? Like people have this feeling of maybe it's not burnout. Maybe it's just that they're lost and they don't know where they're going. If
Yeah.
they don't know what the organization's vision or mission,
Yeah.
okay, maybe we know what the company's for, but how do we get where we want to go?
Yes.
And that's where what I do comes into play. I mean, that's basically what I say I'm your guide. I help you navigate through these problems, right? And this is
Yes.
what having a mentor is all about.
Yeah.
It's so helpful.
Well, because I think you go in and you're a third party. So you're able to come in, assess everything, and give clarity.
Yeah.
Because like you said, and going back to, the kids in school or as they're learning, they get this grandiose idea. Sometimes the school says, oh, you're going to come out and you're going to earn this much money and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, but just remember that is 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 going to the office. You're working.
Yeah.
And they don't get that sometimes. And that's when I feel bad because no one filled them in. Like, this is the real world now. And you may not be in exactly the profession you have your passion in, but you'll be able to get a job. And with a good mentor, sometimes they can push you so that you are applying your passion into your job. If that makes sense. I don't even know if that makes sense, but
yeah, for sure. Sure. And I think, I read an article, I think that came across my inbox this week or last week. And it kind of had a different take on some of this too. And that is that now data is coming in where, yes, you have this great resignation, people are leaving, but they're also realizing that the grass wasn't greener on the other side. And now they're wanting to come back because once again, they're becoming disillusioned. And these aren't millennials that this is happening to, these are people of my generation or baby boomer generation, wherever it is, it's happening to everyone. So I think it's this is where now more than ever, having the ability to have that expert, that mentor, that guide that can help you, not just within your role as an organization, but also, what are you doing to improve yourself?
yes.
You and I had this conversation, I think the last time we spoke, and that was about, I'm so lucky that at one point in early in my career, I had this person that did that for me, really pushed me where I didn't think that I could go. And I think sometimes we just need that help. We need that little extra help, that little extra guide. And that's where I come into organizations and help them figure out. Sometimes, believe it or not, organizations don't have a vision or mission.
No.
How on earth can they get where they want to go if they don't even know where they're going? I mean, I'm all for being spontaneous. If we want to take a road trip, let's get in a car and put away the navigation system. But sometimes you need to know where you're going.
I don't know. If you're going to hire people and have a business, you better have some good mission or navigation on where you want to go. It's very important. But I love that story that you told. As a matter of fact, I'd like you to go into more detail about it if you don't mind. Yeah. Because that's what a mentor can do sometimes is they can sit back. And I read a book. It was, it was by Dr. Jimmy Knotts. It's about being a great leader. I have to get the real full title. But he was talking about how people need to sometimes be still and think about what our good attributes are. Right. And a lot of us are always, I'm guilty of this. I was guilty of this a lot back in my 30s. I was just running to get things done. And I never thought about going towards the jobs or the direction for the company because at the time I couldn't leave the company. I'm in a family-owned business that my mother
Mm-hmm.
started 41 years ago, and I wouldn't leave. But just like
Mm-hmm.
you were saying before, I felt like I couldn't find purpose because my
Right.
job, I wasn't helping out at a food bank, which I would have loved with purpose. I was helping businesses with marketing. But when I finally realized I can put that purpose into my job, that's when
Yes.
finally I slowed down, figured out what my best attributes were, and
Right.
started to go towards those areas. And that's what
Yeah.
happened to you.
Yes, exactly. So I started my career way back when, many, many years ago,
Yeah.
but before the internet existed, right? I was a teacher. First job straight out of college. I was a teacher, taught in middle school. And I was so lucky to have the best leaders in that organization. And, I do a lot of training revolving around leaders and leadership and where that goes. So I think that I have some great resources that I go to today. But back then, those kind of things weren't quite so common.
No.
And so I remember my very first year, again, straight out of college, I was asked to take on this leadership role. And I thought, no one's going to listen to me. I'm this 20 something. I don't even know
Yeah.
what I'm doing. How can you possibly expect me to tell other people what to do or be in any sort of
Yeah.
leadership capacity? But this principal that I had, he saw something in me that I didn't even know that I had. He
Wow.
saw it and he pushed me beyond. And there, a few weeks in, I realized, hey, I am pretty good at this. Like I can
Yeah.
do this. I can help guide. And really that's what it was. It was just providing guidance
Yeah.
and focus where some of these more experienced, right, more senior educators had been there. And that's really what my
Yeah.
role in that leadership role was. And it just propelled me into setting the tone for the rest of my life and every job that I ever had. I
Yeah.
looked for that sort of same kind of guidance, right? We
That's
all look
nice.
for that. We all need
We
it.
do. We do. But you're right. Back when, also I started working before the internet, it wasn't as popular to get a mentor or have a coach. It almost like
Right.
you would get that if you were going through some major crisis and you needed
Sure.
that. But otherwise, it wasn't something you would get just to help you along your path or keep you attainable. But look what this principle did for you. This
Yeah.
principle put you on your path you were able to take throughout your whole life. And it must have been because he saw in you that leadership skill on why you would be good at that.
For sure. Yeah, and I think we all need that from time to time, I think that there's a lot of conversations around being a mentor, being a coach these days.
Yes.
And I think really it's kind of a difference of semantics, like what's the different, people will say what's the difference between a coach or a
Yeah.
tutor or an educator, a trainer, whatever. And I have a couple of examples that I think helps put that in perspective that
Yeah.
maybe people can relate to. So I have two boys. They're both also in college now. And my younger son has always been into sports, always played
Mhm.
sports, right? So he's always had coaches. And he's
Yes.
played every sport there is,
Oh,
from
I hear
ice
you.
hockey to tennis to football, but baseball is his love. So
Yeah.
lots of coaches.
Yeah.
But I kind of realized along the way that those coaches were really coaching the team, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes they would help the individual players. But when my son got to this level where he wanted to be an elite athlete and decided
Yeah.
that this is something he really was serious about doing. And
Mhm.
by the way, he's playing baseball in college now. So, yay.
Yeah. Yes.
So, we had to hire these individual trainers to work with him
Yeah.
specifically to help put him on the right path, right? To
Yeah.
focus on what skill development he needed. What education did he need to help him get where he needed to be? So
Yeah.
he had great coaches, but it was that extra mentorship really that he was getting. And
Yeah.
and these paid help that we got. They really called themselves trainers, which, I love because I'm also in the world of training.
Yeah.
And then I have another example. I'll use my other son as an example. He's an outdoorsman, loves the outdoors. A
Yeah.
few weeks ago, we were celebrating my birthday. We were in the hill country and there's rivers, and he loves to fish.
Yeah.
And he wanted to go fly fishing. And so we wanted to go into this fly shop, and I was like, well, can't you just, pick up a fly anywhere? And he's like, no, Mom, it doesn't work that way.
Hey, wait a minute. I
Obviously
think I've seen
not,
one.
I'm not into fly fishing. And he said, no, you have to go to the guide to tell you where the fish are, what they're feeding on today based on, what's emerging in, the natural world, what fish would naturally be eating today. And that's how,
Fascinating.
he has to go get that guidance just to know what it is that the fish are eating. So
Yeah.
I think everywhere in our world, we have this system that's set up, right, to help us get that guidance that we need. And we all need it, and we all benefit from it so many ways.
Yes. And it's also great when you have someone who can sit back and bring in a different perspective that maybe you wouldn't think about. Just like you were saying, here you were in your 20s and they wanted you to jump into a leadership role. Without their guidance, you wouldn't have done it. It was like when I started this company, or my mother started the company, but when I finally joined, I felt not like an imposter, but I didn't feel like people would take me seriously because they would just see the last name Peterson and say, oh, she's only there because she's family.
Yes.
I had to show my worth. I had to show my knowledge. And I always felt like I had to work almost 10 times harder than everybody else to show that I knew what I was doing.
Yeah, almost like that imposter syndrome that sometimes we get. And I think that's where I felt early in my career when I was kind of thrust into this role. And I thought, oh, they're gonna know that I'm not capable of this. But I think that that's the gift that mentorship gives us, right?
Yes.
It propels us into those areas where we maybe didn't see it before. So it's almost like someone looking from the outside looking in. Sometimes when you're so entrenched in things, you can't see them. And it just takes that external support to see things in a different light, right? Maybe to take that lens and kind of focus it in for you a little bit, where you were looking, from such a distance. They help you hone in and find that focus and figure out where it is that you need to go. And sometimes I feel like maybe that's the difference between coaching or specifically mentoring someone, where, coaching maybe is bigger picture kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And mentoring is a little more focused in, right?
Yeah. I always think of the two, because again, just like you, I'm always looking at the two aspects. And I think I told you, I am big Toastmaster person. I love my Toastmasters International for speaking. And so I mentor several of the members there. But I look at mentorship as a guidance to give a different perspective, but I'm going to stay with them for a long period of time.
Right. Yep.
And Simon Sinek, I think I might have even told you this the last time, he did a great video on mentorship, but he says a good mentorship becomes a friendship because it's a two-way street. You end up helping each other based on the different perspective.
Right. Yeah, it's like they help you. This mentor helps you find that why behind it, right? They help you dig a little bit deeper. So you may be able to set goals for yourself, and that's fine and good. And yes, I'm a huge fan of Toastmasters. We both have this love for Toastmasters because I think it's this hidden gem that people don't really realize. People think of Toastmasters as, oh, those are the people that get together and speak in public for fun, where other people are like, that's my nightmare. Why would anyone do that? But there's this whole other side of Toastmasters that's all about mentoring. And no one really gets a free ride at Toastmasters. You kind of are pushed into having some part of being a mentor as part of your own growth and process. So that's what I love about Toastmasters, is that they combine the two. So the mentee is getting the benefit of the mentor, but the mentor is getting something out of it too. Anytime you're helping another person, for me, that's what gave me that purpose. Like if
Yeah.
you feel like something's missing, maybe instead of quitting your job, find a bigger purpose, help someone
Yeah.
else grow at work, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's that you're already at the top. Where else are you going to go? Maybe you don't need it, but maybe the purpose that you're there for is to help someone else get better. And then, your organization benefits from that too. So you just have
You're
to
right.
everyone needs to find that.
Yeah. And sometimes when you're at the top, you almost feel like, all right, I'm at the top. What's left? And like you said, if
Right.
you go and you find your purpose,
Yeah.
and within Toastmasters, not that this is a big Toastmaster commercial of ours, but I just happen to be going through the effective coaching pathway. And
Mm,
they go through that whole breakdown of mentor to coach.
right.
What's the difference? And it's very interesting because I've always kind of been a talker,
Mhm.
So I have had to learn to be a better listener.
Yes, for
And
sure.
I just heard something yesterday. Someone was interviewing Nelson Mandela, and
Mm,
they asked him, "What made you into being such a great leader?" And he said, "Well, I followed my father around to his different meetings. And the one thing that I felt was very important is my father was always the last one to speak."
yeah.
So he wasn't saying listen, but he's saying basically listen first, then talk.
Right.
So
I'm
if
a
you're
huge fan. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm just saying, because if you are a leader, sometimes we get into the boardroom or we're sitting down with our clients and we'll say, well, our objective here is we're going to blah, 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 blah. What do you
Right.
think? Where if we sat there and said, hi, I want to hear from you first about
Yes.
what your objectives are. And then when they come around to you after you've digested all, that's when you can give in your feedback, but be the last to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of that adage, we have two ears and one mouth. There's a reason for that. We need to listen more than we speak. And it's challenging sometimes, especially when you're excited or you're passionate or there are problems, right? That you sometimes want to make sure that your voice is heard. That same mentor that I had as that middle school teacher, one of the other things that he instilled in me is he may have even purchased this book for me, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh,
It was probably a new book back then, way
Stephen
back
Covey.
then. I'm certainly aging myself now. Right. Stephen Covey. So The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I think that's habit number 1. Listen first to understand, not
Yeah.
to be understood. And that's really what a great leader does, right? They ask more questions than they speak. And I've had the opportunity to have some phenomenal leaders that have done that for me. And then I've also experienced a few that have not done that. But we learn a lot. We learn the lessons most from those, right?
Yes. Yeah. I'll always
Yeah.
tell my children when they run into an experience like that, I said, all right, I know they're not a great leader or coach, but look at what they're doing. And then when you're in that position, make sure you don't do that.
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
can tell as an employee, you can tell as a participant what's effective and what isn't effective.
Oh,
And
for
then you could
sure.
take those skills and go forward.
Yeah, I don't know where I heard this not too long ago. I love this concept. I'll have to send it to you afterwards, and then maybe you can put it in the comments, or I can
Yeah.
put it in there if I can remember where this came from. But the concept of instead of using the word fail, it's
Yeah.
fell or fall. And I thought, wow, what a powerful
Yeah.
concept. Because when think about a toddler learning to walk, just because they
Yeah.
fell down, they still got back up and kept going. They didn't just give up. So I kind of love that idea. And
Yeah.
it's those moments when you fall down that you learn some of the best lessons, right?
Yes.
It teaches you something. So you
Yeah.
find purpose behind those problems, behind those issues. And
Yeah.
we can all do that at work too. But I think it's important that we have a workplace culture where we're talking about those moments of, maybe not failure, but falling You
Yes.
know, how did
Yeah.
we miss the mark on that one? Like, you need to be able to come forward and talk about it. And sometimes that's
Yeah.
what mentorships do too, where you're focusing on, why can't I get past this? How do I move to the next level? They
Right.
help you kind of break it down and see it in a different way that maybe you didn't see before.
Yeah. I love that when you say fall instead of fail. And I don't know if you've ever listened to Sarah Blakely. She is the
Oh, yes.
founder of Spanx.
Yeah, I love her.
She talks about her father every night would ask them what they failed at, because he felt that if they didn't fail, they didn't push themselves,
Right.
excuse me, outside their comfort zone.
Yeah.
And so what I tell a lot of my employees is, I want you to be innovative. And if that
Mhm.
means you go out and try something new and you fail, that is all right. Let's learn
Yeah.
from it and then go. But it's so much better than you sitting here. And like when you said employees need to do this, that's where management has to be encouraging them
Yep.
to do it. Not that they feel like they're going to get a bad mark against them because they failed.
Right.
Where if you go out, even with marketing, I'll say to my clients, you might have campaigns that will bomb.
Right.
But I always say that's a good thing, because now we're
Yes.
going to gather all that information
Yep.
and figure out how to proceed. I don't look at it as a negative.
No. And, we're really becoming this data-driven society, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's so focused on the numbers,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to marketing and social media.
Yes.
I do a lot of that in my roles too. And people can become fixated on them. But if you don't understand what it means, then you may be focusing on the wrong thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you said, especially in the marketing world. I
Yeah.
mean, not every success can be a huge success, exactly like what you
Yeah.
said. That means we're probably, we're maybe being a little complacent. Like, we're only doing the things that we know are going to succeed. How do we become more innovative if we're not trying? And
That's right.
trying means you're going to make some mistakes.
Yes.
That's just that next step that gets you to the big success. We have to continue pushing ourselves. And that, to me, is what mentorship really is all about. It's
Yes.
pushing everyone beyond what they think their limits are,
Yes.
so that they have the ability to achieve more than they even thought they could achieve without that guidance, without that support. And the support part of it's really important too, right?
Yeah. Well, I always say, and if you have a champion in your corner, and that's what I
Yep.
think of a mentor, as a champion in your
Yes.
corner. Of course, I don't even like boxing, but I'm thinking about a boxing ring,
Oh,
where
yeah.
the boxer sits down and the person's
Right.
there. And yes, it's a coach, but it's a trainer. When you
Right.
have that champion who can direct you and put you in those areas that
Yeah.
they think that you're going to excel at, because they can tell by your attributes, you
Yeah.
are going to succeed a lot of the time. And like you're going to find an area you would have thought you would have never have gone into.
Right.
Like for me, before I joined Toastmasters, I hated to public speak. I I would have never have done
Right.
something like this. I now lecture in church. I don't knock
Mhm.
the pulpit over. I do these lives because doing this, I have been able to have such great conversations like what I'm
Yeah.
having with you, that I would have never had before. But it gave me that new spark of light, because
Yeah.
otherwise it's like, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do the same thing again this year or whatever. And it just opens it up. So a champion in your corner is
Mhm.
such a plus for people.
For sure. Yeah, and I love that about Toastmasters. It's, people, you kind of become a Toastmaster, whether you're actively pursuing it. It's something that happens to you.
Yeah.
And you become this Toastmaster for life, whether you're going to meetings regularly or not. There's just something that happens to you. It changes
Yeah.
you. This power of speaking and connection and growing, it's so powerful. And I think the power of that connection, right? The power of speaking, the power of communicating is so, so powerful.
Yes.
it's, one of the few things that, I do a lot of research in my world with, especially with skills and training and building training programs. And every week I'm looking at what are the top needs that organizations have, and communication remains at the top most needed, and most not only most important, but also most needed, that organizations are saying our employees need help with this. They need to be better at communicating. And Toastmasters is such an inexpensive, like, it's this best kept secret. What an amazing opportunity people have, right? To be part of that. It's so inexpensive. It's phenomenal. We love it.
Yeah, well, we do. And like you said, that speaking aspect. But what I think with Toastmasters, what I found is you used to think that people who got up and spoke were perfect. And there's no way you could do that. And you start to realize as you go through, I've heard some very good speakers who are ummers. They have like 13 ums in a speech.
Yeah.
And that's where you don't have to be perfect. Just start doing it. And that's where, as a mentor, you can encourage someone to just start. Just start. It's like when you go out running. I'll go out running and sometimes I'm like, oh, goodness gracious. In the first 5 minutes, you're in extreme pain or torture. And you're like, why bother? But when you get past that first 5 minutes, then you can sink into it and enjoy it. You listen to the birds, the gravel.
Yeah.
And that's the same with public speaking. You start getting out there and then I want more.
Right.
Let's go. Give it to me.
I think for me, one of the biggest shift changes and coming from the world of training and leadership, I felt like I had a really good grasp on feedback, right? And analysis, and being able to help people get better, because that's what training is all about, organizationally or individually, whatever. But there's this concept of Toastmasters that really focuses on the feedback in such a way that you would not believe when someone new walks in, that you would look forward to someone telling you what you did wrong. Because in our society, we have this, oh, I was so bad, I didn't do it right, I missed this, or it was too long or too short, or I said too many ums.
Yes.
But once you realize that when you get that feedback, it's the gift that makes your next speech or whatever it is that you're working toward that much better. That's where the growth comes from. And it comes from recognizing the areas where improvement can be had. And you really begin to look forward to it. And then you start asking yourself, why isn't this happening in every facet of my life? But again, I think that's sometimes where that mentorship comes from. And I think, if we tie it all together with looking at the Great Resignation, I think that really a lot of organizations need to look inward and figure out where are the areas that they can do better, right? And in one of the organizations I work really closely with, they just lost a great employee that got poached by another organization. And so we were having this conversation about the importance of the exit interview. And sometimes people wait until they're leaving an organization to tell the leadership what they needed. So I think in our organizations, we just need to do a better job of having that open door, of really wanting the feedback, not just saying, hey, my door's always open, you can tell me whatever you want, but really meaning it, asking for it.
And that, I think, like you said, it's with every relationship in your life. With your kids, with your spouse, your friends, your parents, whatever it is, it comes down to communication. But I think people have to feel, not that it's a two-way street, but they've got to feel like they're really being heard. Otherwise, they might say, well, that's a waste of my time. They didn't even, nothing changed.
Right. For sure. And I think that if you're going to give it, you need to be willing to receive it. Right.
Yes.
It is a two-way street.
I speak to a lot of women who they are having this issue where they don't feel like their voice is being heard, or they don't know where they're at because they're not getting the guidance from management.
Right.
And that's where I wish they would open up and say, you know what, say, I need to have a sit down. I need to, but as a
Yeah.
manager, that's where it's great for the employees to encourage them to do that. But if you want to be a great leader,
Mm-hmm.
and we talk about relationship building, relationship building and marketing
Yeah.
is key right now. And I say, well, it's got to come down from above in a corporation. So if you want your
Yeah.
marketing team to do relationship building, hey, okay, C-level, relationship building with all your employees in your organization by knowing, what is their goal? Like, what are their
Right.
objectives? It's not just to get a paycheck, because if it is, like you said, they'll get poached by the next company that might offer
Sure.
them more. So you've
Yeah.
got to offer them something else, and
And then
showing that
chances are that person is going to leave and they're going to realize the
yeah,
problems exist at the other place too. And then they may want to come back.
right. But during the exit interview, if maybe they did, pose what their problems were with the
Yeah.
job, they would have said, oh, I would have liked it if you told us this sooner. We could have done this, this, and this. Then, like you
Right.
said, they leave. They feel like they're in the same situation. They may think about coming back.
Yeah. I used to deliver this customer service training for an organization, and I'm not sure who developed the training. It was a great training. I love delivering customer service training because I feel like there's so many personal levels to it too, right?
Yeah.
And there was this one statistic that was in there, and I kind of got fixated on this one statistic because I wanted to know where it came from. And the person that developed it, I don't know, I got it from someplace. So I drilled it down and found it. And it was the statistic that where we were saying that more than 90% of people do not complain or give feedback when something is wrong. And I drilled it down and found, I think it came from like 2006, the White House Office of Consumer Affairs, which apparently doesn't exist anymore, because I wanted to find a more updated statistic and see if that, in the age of social media, if that's still true, because I feel like we're all telling everybody what they're
Yeah.
bad at these days. And I imagine that that's probably been reduced. But if you think about people that come across situations just every day, like at a restaurant, like my husband almost never gives feedback.
Yeah.
We were at a gas station somewhere and the pump wasn't working. And I said, well, let's go inside and tell the person, that the pump isn't working. And they were like, what? Why would we do that? And so we went inside and told the person that the pump wasn't working. And they were like, oh, well, nobody said that to us. So imagine how many hundreds of people drove into that slot and just pulled out and left. They could have fixed it sooner, right? So if
Yes.
we
If
know
people.
about these problems sooner, we
Yeah.
have to become, and it's not about just, being nasty and giving nasty feedback or nasty
Right.
comments. I
Right.
think is, kind of the drudgery of social media, why people say that that's bad. We need to do it in a diplomatic way. We need to do it
Yeah.
in an effective way, in a way that's meaningful and beneficial. But I think that as a society, we maybe need to get a little bit more comfortable with that so that things can get better. And I think once you have that mindset, it feels good. You
Yeah.
don't feel like personally attacked because someone told you did something wrong.
Yeah.
You feel like, oh, great. Now I know what to look. Now I have something to do. I have something to look forward to.
Yeah. You're working together to make it better.
Yeah. Right.
Because isn't that what we're all after?
Yeah,
So
I would
here's my
think.
question to you. You're in a corporation. You've been passed up for a promotion you thought you would be good at, but you don't want to be a complainer. You want to be a good team player. So you don't say anything.
Wow. For me, I feel like that probably would never happen because I'm that small percent of the population that does give me feedback.
Yoo-hoo,
I'm the anomaly. Like, hey, Christian, what happened? But I think that as leaders, in a leadership perspective, we need to be able to give communication and explain the why behind. I was reading something on LinkedIn the other day, just this random post that I saw. Someone, I guess, fresh college graduate has been doing all of these interviews and made it past certain levels. And they're like, now I'm being ghosted. Like, I'm getting nothing. Where did that come from? And I feel like, I was reading through some of the advice and people were saying, oh, they just, you're probably going to get the rejection letter, just but I feel like sometimes in those moments, we need to communicate with people.
Yeah.
Why didn't you get it? What's the reason?
Yeah.
And sometimes, that may be something more personal, and sometimes we're afraid to tell people that. But as leaders, you really need to, because then that person's just going to think that they were being passed over. And if there's a legitimate reason, give them something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Even in organizations where they only have the annual review, right? Only once a year, we're giving this person feedback.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we be doing it more often?
Yes.
And then that person would probably know that they weren't ready to take on that promotion.
Right.
Or, but you've got to ask the question, why?
Well, and I think that's where the employee also has to ask the question, like you're saying, because that shows upper management that they're ready for a leadership role. They're not going to just sit there and be steamrolled and just, oh, all right, I want to keep everything happy. Business is, like, ask. You don't have to be mean about it. Like, sure, why did you pass me over? Just say nicely, I'm curious. I've got the qualifications. What was it that I wasn't, asked for this, if I wanted this position? And I think what that does, like I said, it shows management that you are ready to step up. You will stand up when things aren't right.
Right.
And so people have to remember, don't just sit here and try to be like the nice, quiet team player.
Yeah.
You have to vocalize.
Absolutely. There's a scenario that happened recently. My stepson recently graduated. He was in construction science. And so now he's building these buildings in downtown Austin, Texas. And he's on this phenomenal project, like his first year out of college. It's amazing. Wow. And, he'll call us and ask for advice on things that happen. And, some of the feedback that we're giving is tell people what you're experiencing. Don't just suffer through it, right?
Yeah.
Tell them where support is needed. Ask questions. And he's gotten his second raise in like a year because he's having these conversations with his leadership. And it makes it really makes all the difference. And we're hoping, like for him to start off his career this way, hopefully that'll set him on a really good trajectory and path. Just like, I was put on at the beginning and start of my career, that I feel like I kind of just got lucky in that aspect. But it's those things that I still go back to today, right? It just built this solid foundation for me, for my career and what I do. And I think he also maybe implanted that seed in me to ask why, to ask those questions and to be comfortable doing that. And maybe that's why I'm that person in the room that, smaller than 10%. That always asks the question or doesn't agree with the idea, right?
Yes.
Maybe, I'm not trying to always rock the boat, but I'm not afraid to ask questions.
Well, and it's like the gas station. If you don't mention about the gas pump, or if your stepson doesn't come forward with these questions or concerns, sometimes the company doesn't know. They have no idea this is happening, or things could change, because it can make them more efficient.
Right.
And a better company.
Yeah. And, we look at the Great Resignation. I wonder how many organizations even have an exit interview policy. Imagine all of the things that they could be learning, that maybe it's too late to fix it for that one person. But if they do the exit interview right, they can figure out how they can stop the bleeding.
Yes.
Right. And the attrition that's happening in their organization today. And I think it's just important to be the good listener, to ask the right questions, and to provide that ample opportunity for people to give that, right, in a meaningful kind of way, and be sincere about it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you open up the conversation. You open up the conversation so people can talk, but you can see it where companies, and this is where people have to catch themselves, whether you're a business or whether you're an individual, sometimes something bad happens and you get mad. So you get mad that this employee is going to leave. You don't want to talk to them. You don't want to give them the time of day, but you're right. If you can be a little bit more enlightened in how you're handling it, you could stop the bleeding, but you also could set that little notion in their head of, oh, wow, look at this. They're willing to change. This
Yeah.
doesn't pan out. I'll come back.
Right. And if this person was truly a great employee and it's someone that you don't want to lose, then you leave that window open. You leave that door open by asking those questions. And you say, hey, look, if you do want to come back, then I'm sure that we can implement some of these changes, or we can give you the support that you needed, or whatever it is that was missing that they didn't have before. It's
That's
all about that opportunity and continuing that relationship.
And that's a very good point you just made. Because if a company says that to the individual about, come back if you'd like,
Right.
that opens it up where some people might be like, oh my goodness, I can't go back.
Yeah.
I can't ask for my job back.
Right.
Especially if the person who's doing the exit interview, at the end says, I understand it's all about learning and growing as an individual. We all have to test different things out. But if you find out that's not a good fit for you, please keep us in mind. They do
Yeah.
that, and that would be excellent.
Right. And, I was watching, I think it was the Today Show this morning. They had a segment where they were talking about how to address a career gap that you've had. And there were all these conversations about it. And I think that's important sometimes. Maybe it's not just a career gap. Maybe you are leaving an organization and you want to try something totally different and it doesn't work out, right? So you can explain that. And there's probably something, what they said was you need to frame that in your cover letter or your resume or somewhere, explain why you had this gap or a twist or something, and what you learned from it and what you bring back to the table when you come back. So I think for people that are leaving organizations, if you decide that, hey, I thought it was going to be really great having that remote job, but that company is not all it was cracked up to be, and I want to come back, then I think that's what you do. You bring this conversation to your former leadership, your former employee, and you say, hey, this is what I learned. And now I'm going to bring this back and I'm going to be, an even better employee for you. Maybe that happens. I don't know.
I bet you it does, because a lot of people with COVID and everything thought, oh, this working remote is so great.
Right.
They loved it. But, you see now people want to get back in the office. They want to talk to other people. They don't want to be home all day staring at this little box.
No, and it's not for everyone.
No.
I saw some statistics. Surprisingly, I think it may have been a LinkedIn poll where there was a survey that asked people, I think it was like in 2019, and it was a breakdown of what you wanted in terms of flexibility at work. And interestingly enough, from that result from 2019 to 2020, after the pandemic had passed, or was in the middle of it, that number actually was reduced from the previous year, that fewer people wanted to be able to work remotely. Now, I'm a fan of working remotely because I feel like I have an infrastructure. I've done it for many, many years. My biggest problem is turning off work, which is, I think, the opposite of what most employers think happens. They think everybody's at home just playing hooky and not doing their work or whatever. But for me, it's, I hit the ground running. I don't have to spend an hour in traffic or prepping for whatever. I'm so much more productive because I can do it. And I can also do it on my schedule, right? So I can fit more things in. I can be so much more flexible and accommodating for people and accommodate that work-life balance that you need, right? Yeah. So it's not for everyone, though. Some people also, people would think that I'm an extrovert, but I'm really introverted. So being around a lot of people all the time exhausts me. Yes. I can do it because I'm an extroverted introvert. I've learned how to adapt.
I've never heard that
so
before.
Yeah. Maybe I made it up. I don't know. But I'm so tired after spending, in my days that I do large training sessions with, like hundreds of people. I mean, I almost need like a week off to recover from that. It is just like, it's exhausting. It just takes so much out of me. And I'm fine in the moment, but afterwards, I need alone time. I need quiet.
That's usually how I am after trade shows, especially if we're doing a booth. So you're on in the old direct marketing association shows. we would do crazy hours. It would be like 7 to 7 at night. You're at your
Right.
booth. Then you would do the networking thing afterwards. Sometimes you'd have the
Yeah.
coffee even before. And by the time the days were done, I would get home and I would just be like, I don't
Right.
want to smile. I don't want to say hello to anyone.
No people.
Yeah, I don't want to
Yeah.
talk to anyone.
I am fasting from people. In fact, next week I'm going to be at a conference. I'm already planning like the resting up before and
Yeah.
the quiet time after. Like I have my calendar blocked because I know that if I don't do that for myself,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be 100% the person that I can be. So it's important for me. And the rest of us that are introverted.
Yeah. But I don't
Introverted
know.
extroverts.
You could
I don't know.
almost say, I don't know if it's an introverted, extroverted thing, because you and I, when we go to these trade shows, I'm sure we are spot on the whole time we're
Yeah,
there,
sure.
trying to meet as many people. I go
Right.
by, this could be another talk altogether. I'll go by some booths and I'll look over and like their feet are up on the desk and they're reading the newspaper. And I'm like, do you know how much this book, like don't think they have any idea how much the booth costs. I'm like, do you
Wow.
know how much
Yeah,
this
no.
costs for all of you to be here? I feel like going over there and like their
Right.
mother
Do
slapping their
something,
feet off the
right?
desk saying, stand up, say hello to people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Immerse yourself in what's happening for
right.
sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But going back to a point you made about the turning off and on, that's another
Mhm.
thing management has to be aware of, because you do have the people
Yes.
who might be type A, or maybe you're just starting out. So you're trying to make a name for yourself. So you sit and you work really
Mhm.
long days, and that could definitely result in
Oh,
burnout.
for sure. Yeah. I mean, burnout's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's just, I think some people are assuming that that's the cause of the whole Great Resignation. But for sure, yeah, there's definitely, I mean, I've seen it. My dad retired from ExxonMobil after many, many years. Exxon had this policy where you had to use your vacation.
Mm.
And I kind of love that, right? I think,
Yeah.
they had some brilliant things that they would do. And that was one of them. You don't get to, we're not going to let it roll over. We're not going to pay you back for that unused time. We know the benefit of you taking time off to rejuvenate
Yeah.
yourself, because it makes you a better employee and it makes you a happier person.
Yeah.
So yeah, they want you to take that time off. And I think we all have to recognize that in ourselves too.
Yes.
And so that's just, my way of saying, yeah, after I have like multiple training sessions with a lot of people, I have to find that balance so that
Right.
I can meet everyone else's needs, because if my cup is empty, I have nothing to give for anyone else.
That's right. That's right. I know my daughter just started with a company, and once a month they give them an extra day. Everyone is off that Friday. It doesn't go across their vacation time, but they're supposed to take it as a personal, go out and do something, whatever you want.
Wow.
And I think it's really nice doing that, because again, that goes back to showing your employees that you
Yeah.
care about them. And then if you incorporate in regular meetings with them, just to check
Mhm.
in, how are you doing?
Yes.
Has it been too much? Are you doing too many Zoom calls?
Right.
Whatever your business is, check in with your employees and see where they're at. Make sure they're
Yeah.
being heard with their concerns.
Yeah, and I love that idea of the checking in. I think that's something also that was missing during the pandemic that maybe
Yeah.
led to some of this burnout, because I think a lot of organizations were not doing that check-in. They're
Yeah.
just treading water, trying to stay afloat.
Or
And in
they were doing,
Texas,
just
we're go
just
ahead.
to interrupt you from it. They were doing the check-in sometimes, but it was like a whole group of 50 people.
Right.
I don't think
You guys
that's
are
what you and
fine,
I are
right?
talking about.
Yeah. Everybody okay? Okay, good.
Like,
Yeah.
who's going to speak up and say, no?
Suffering.
Yeah.
Right. And it's important to have that one-on-one moment.
Yeah.
Right. But I think I'm in an area of Texas. I'm in South Texas, and we're very much a community that is so dependent on travel and the hospitality industry. And even though Texas pretty much stayed open, we're still suffering, right? We're still having trouble with that. And so I think with a lot of the organizations that I work with, we're seeing a reflection of that, is that people were not so much feeling supported during that. And so now organizations are kind of trying to come back and say, okay, well, we're going to get you that technical training. Because we didn't ask you if you knew. We gave it to you, but we never asked you if you knew how to use it.
Yeah.
And now you guys have all told us, because you all quit, that you didn't know how to use it. So now we're going to go back and fix it. I mean, this is happening. It's crazy. It's happening.
Yeah. Well, at least they're trying to fix it. It's better than not fixing it.
Better late than never, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. But maybe you'll pull some people back if you teach them something new.
Right. And I think that's the other thing, that when people are talking about the needs of an organization, a lot of times there have been studies that have shown that it's not just the pay that is what everyone's looking for. They want to feel supported, and education and training and that kind of support, it ranks way high up with the top needs, and the being heard. So I think that if organizations can look at, if they're being impacted by this Great Resignation, then I think they need to look inward, and they need to start asking the questions before people leave. Yes. And here's the thing that I have found also in other organizations, is that once a few people start leaving, it kind of starts a trend. And it's important that you get a handle on that before it really gets out of control. And at this point, you're just doing the best that you can to stop the bleeding. Yeah. Right. It's tough.
It is tough. I saw something recently, and I think it was by Stephen Covey's son. He was co-author of a book called 4DX. And they were saying, in the company culture, one of the best things is competition.
Yeah.
Employees like having that competition element to their job. So that I thought was very interesting.
I think certain personalities are more comfortable with that than others, as long as it's not done in a cutthroat kind of way. And I'm sure if it came from Covey, no way that it was. I'm sure that it was, a very healthy way of looking at it. But I've also been in, I've been in sales where, it's very cutthroat and highly competitive. And then you get in this world where I've seen people are competing with other people in their organization, where it becomes a little bit toxic, and you have the hoarding of information, and it's not collaborative. But I think that when it's done in the right way, that kind of competition and fun and game, I mean, if you think about it, that's really what games are.
Yes, you're right.
Children, there's a little element of playing and fun and competing and learning all at the same time. So certainly I think that when it's done right, there's certainly an element of fun and growth and team building and relationship building, for sure. Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. It can't be cutthroat. If it's cutthroat, you have it where people are stealing things off of each other's desks, or that's not going to work. That's going to backfire on you.
Yeah.
So, well, Renée, I have kept you for a long time, but I really have enjoyed our conversation here. I hope other people, as they hear this, will get little tidbits. It will help them to rethink and stop the Great Resignation. Like you said, stop the bleeding. And hold on to their employees.
Yes, I hope so too. It's been a great joy to be with you, as always.
Yes.
Our conversations could probably last for days.
we can. Matter of fact, I just looked up. I'm like, oh my goodness, we talked for over an hour already. I'm like, how can that be?
Doesn't seem like it, right?
No, it didn't. It went by so fast. But
this is what happens when you get two Toastmasters together.
There you go. But I want to thank you very much, and I'm sure I will talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks so much, Donna.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.